Now, we are now joined live on the line here in our studio in Washington, D.C., Times Radio Drive. Now welcomes Congressman Barry Moore, who is the representative for the 1st District of Alabama and a member of the House Judiciary Committee and the Agriculture Committee for Good Measure. Congressman, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you, John. I appreciate you having me on this morning.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. Congressman, can I ask you first of all, are you entirely happy with the president's first 100 days in office? I've seen this described, well, actually I've heard it described by Donald Trump quite a few times as the most successful start to a presidency in history. Would you go that far? Do you share that view?
Yeah, I think if you just look at the border crisis itself, I mean, March of this year compared to March of 24, crossings are down 95%. And, you know, he ran on securing the U.S. southern border. And I think in many ways, that is just one measurement of the success that he's having. And I think, honestly, I've been pleased with his cabinet. I've been pleased with the secretaries that he's put in positions. I've met with Pam Bondi and a number of others. And I just think that President Trump is putting a team around himself and has put a team around himself that he can, he can work with, that he can trust. I think it's important in this environment in Washington, D.C. You got to be able to trust the people around you. I think that's one thing maybe, John, that he picked up on from his first administration is he needs to put people that are here to get the job done. And we've got to move pretty quick. We understand that.
Yeah, so I hear you. You give him maximum marks, 10 out of 10 on every possible measure, including the cabinet. I mentioned the cabinet, Congressman, because I'm looking at a news feed coming in live from the White House. There's the president and his cabinet sitting around him. On his left side, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary. And you're perfectly happy with that appointment too, despite not just one but two leaks of secret military information on a social media app. Where I come from, look, I don't take sides in these things. I just report what I see. I can tell you, though, in my home, if a minister had done such a thing, they'd be out on their ear in seconds. You're entirely happy, though.
You know, I think if I just talk to the soldiers and being a veteran myself, they are excited about Pete. And then they think he'll do a good job. He is one of them. And he's not a part of the establishment or the swamp, as we call it here in D.C. But also, I mean, if you go back historically, I mean, the 30,000 deleted emails the Secretary of State had, there are things when Milley withdrew from Afghanistan, they were calling for their resignation. I think this is a leftist narrative that they're pushing, trying to undermine the cabinet, trying to undermine the establishment, that President Trump, the people he's putting around him. And so, look, I talk to the people on the ground, the soldiers and the people in my district at Fort Novosel, and they're really excited. We don't need DEI in the military. The only box people need to be checking is the box that they're qualified to do the job. And I think Pete checks that box. And so, there's going to be criticisms. There always have been. Every time Trump seems to pick somebody, there's some kind of criticisms. But to me, you give it time and you look at the people in the field and their response, and they're pretty excited, John. I think in general, I give the president high marks on all his members.
Okay, and yet, Congressman, no presidency has had such a low approval rating after 100 days in office. Well, there was one exception, and that was Donald Trump in his first term.
Well, yeah, and I think that really hits to the point, doesn't it? It's because the narrative in the media is all negative. If you look at the reporting on Donald Trump's first 100 days, 96% of the stuff is negative. And so in general, if you poll the public, you may get the negatives. But when I talk to folks in the district, when I talk to people in this country, part of the 75 million that reelected him, and there was a lot of bumper stickers around going and say, I'm going to vote for the felon. Apparently, the American people didn't really care what the DOJ said or what they charged him with. They want a man who will lead and who really cares about America and puts America first. And they see him moving in that direction. And I don't always trust the polls because, those things can be kind of tainted. However, depends on how you ask that question, John.
Okay. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I completely understand your point and recognize what you say when you say that the media, the mass media in America is just so polarized. People hear generally a perspective on an argument, usually the one that they happen to agree with. And then I see these opinion polls, which are not rigged. We're talking about some respectable pollsters here, which seem to tell me that swing voters, the independents in America, their support and faith in the president's economic handling seems to be falling off a cliff. That's a real thing.
Well, yeah, it's the real thing because there's the unknowns in so much of the media to me. And look, the media lost a lot of credibility, John. You have to agree with me that the media lost so much credibility on the Russian collusion, on all these narratives. And like I even in judiciary, we talked about when I was questioning the Attorney General Merrick Garland about how in the world could a man have a record fundraising 4 days after being charged with felonies. And normally, in the political world campaign over, but the American people are not believing what the media is selling. But when you start talking about the tariffs and they're going, oh, they're going to cut this, they're going to cut that, and Doge and what they're doing, really, if you look at it, the stuff that they're doing, stuff that we promised in D.C. to do for 40 years. We're gonna cut waste, fraud, and abuse, and then the media goes out, well, they're going to cut Medicaid, or they're going to cut these benefits. It's not really true. Most of the stuff that's being cut is not impacting my people directly. They see it as the waste and fraud and abuse that we promised to do away with, that Doge is actually doing. And the tariffs, I mean, Trump ran for years. Pelosi did speeches on the floor. Chuck Schumer did speeches on the floor of the Senate saying, we've got to get fair trade deals. We've got to do a better job managing China. When Trump actually does it, the media loses their minds and tries to just fear monger. And that's why the media itself is losing credibility. And I don't trust these polls. I just trust the people. And the people I talk to in the 1st Congressional District in Alabama say, Donald Trump is doing exactly what we elected him to do. Matter of fact, most of them want him to move faster and want us to be more effective in codifying what he is doing with his EOs, the executive orders. And so,
okay, look, so
John, I know we're in a bubble up here, brother. We're in a bubble. But in real America, most of the people out there appreciate what the president's doing.
Okay, well, look, let me just invite you, if I can, Congressman, to give some advice in the best possible faith from a supporter of the president when it comes to the tariff policy that you mentioned there. In your view, should the president stick to this trade war, this tariff war, and then see prices go up, see the economy slow down?
It's not a trade war, my friend. It's just renegotiations of deals that have been done for years. You go back to the Marshall Plan coming out of World War II, where we said, yeah, Japan and Germany, y'all can sell your cars over here, but we won't bother having any Fords in London or any, Chevrolets in Tokyo, because we cut a deal almost 100 years ago that has negatively impacted the auto industry in America. And so, and honestly, I got golfers, shrimpers in the Gulf of America that love the idea of tariffs. I've got foresters who appreciate tariffs. And Trump used to go on Oprah Winfrey in the 1980s and 90s ago. He said, I don't want to run for president, but we're really cutting some bad deals. We need some business guys at the head of this thing. And look, he's doing what he said he was going to do, John. And if we're going to restore production back in America, we've got to bring those jobs back. And tariffs, when you see, it's not a trade war when people are coming over here lining up to have a meeting with the president to negotiate their tariffs on U.S.
Okay. Look, I mean, I if we had more time, I could point out that there are countries across the Atlantic, across Europe, who are looking at being driven into a recession by this tariff policy. They do see it as a very aggressive act. War, a trade war, may be a rather emotive term, but I think many would say that's perfectly justified. I do have to, though, draw the line there, and I'm grateful to you, Congressman, for joining us on the program this afternoon. Thank you.